Okay, we are going to get started. We're at the top of the hour. Good afternoon, good morning to our West Coast audience, and good evening to those guests from Europe. Thank you for spending the next hour with us. For the duration of the webinar, all attendees will be muted. We encourage many questions and ask you to type them in the text box. We will address as many as possible. On the behalf of the Divine Group and Outmatch Company, I'd like to welcome you to our presentation on how to hire people who will succeed in their next 3 sales roles. Today, talent expert Kellyanne McGrath will talk about the benefits of a long game hiring strategy and share success stories from companies that are changing lives and providing pathways from sales to leadership. My name is Logan Sand, and it's a pleasure to be serving as your moderator for the hour. If you want to get in touch with me about future webinar topics, Outmatch specific information, or you'd like to speak with one of our many talent experts, feel free to reach out to me by email, lsand@outmatch.com, or just chat in the comments. As a thank you for attending today, you'll receive a free copy of How to Lock Learning Agility to Boost Leadership Performance. This ebook will help you identify learning agility among your current and future leaders and instill a learning agile mindset across your organization. You can find this ebook attached in the handout section of your status window. Also, please take a moment to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter at Outmatch HCM. We're always posting the latest trends, best practices, and insights on hiring and talent management. We'd love to hear from you. You're also encouraged to engage with us today's webinars. As a reminder, please ensure you're muted for the duration of the presentation, but feel free to ask questions, make comments, and share feedback in the webinar chat window. You can also ask questions or leave comments on social media. Today's presentation will take approximately 30 minutes, and following that, we'll address as many questions as we can for the duration of the hour. Joining us today is Darby Fazekas. Darby is the Senior Vice President of Business Development here at the Divine Group and Outmatch Company. For the past 14 years, she's worked with our reselling partners globally, helping them apply talent analytics and assessment solutions to enhance their training and consulting business, which drives ROI and client retention. Darby? Darby, I believe you're self-muted. I can't get you off.
Thank you, Logan. I was self-muted. See, I'm good at following directions. So thank you, Logan, and welcome to our Sandler partners and to their clients and prospective clients. Today's presenter is Kellyanne McGrath. As the Vice President of Enterprise Client Success, Kellyanne works with our largest clients to solve their most pressing talent challenges. And for the past 3.5 years, her focus has been on aligning selection and development to help companies discover hidden talent and drive potential throughout their entire organization. Now, although Kellyanne concentrates on our largest clients, she is also a fabulous reference for our mid-market and entrepreneurial clients. Kellyanne?
Thank you so much, Darby. I really appreciate it. And thank you to those that are joining the call today. We're really excited to present some of the things we'll talk about in the next 30 minutes or so. We're really going to focus and kind of kicking off by sharing with you just some of the talent challenges that you yourselves may face in your day-to-day work in terms of selecting and developing folks into the right sales roles within your organization. We're also going to talk about how do you maximize potential of those individuals that are currently within your kind of organization today, helping them rise to the occasion in their current roles, but also how do you get them to kind of go beyond that current role and prepare for succession planning into next level roles. We'll also talk a little bit about how you align assessments with that strategy. So what does that look like in terms of leveraging the tools that are provided to you today that some of you may use through the Divine technology, but also how do you partner that with kind of making sure it aligns with your strategy and what you would do to kind of enforce that and put it into practice moving forward. If we start off and kind of think about those current talent challenges, now everyone on the call today, primarily your focus is really within the sales realm. And most of these current talent challenges are ones that I'm sure ring pretty true to you when you think about kind of those that you're hiring, what you're coming up across in hiring the right talent, but also how to develop that talent. So if we kind of click through and look at some of these current challenges and make them come to life, the first of which is really unemployment. So as most of you are aware, our unemployment has really fell to the lowest it has ever been since 1969. This is probably not news to anyone on the call, but really presents us all with a big challenge of kind of finding the right talent at the right time and making sure they're the right fit for our organization. The next talent challenge that really comes to mind is just competition for that top talent. So obviously that's kind of related to the unemployment rate in some fashion, but really that competition when you're looking for the right salesperson to fill the role within your organization, because in most instances, your organization has a really unique culture, and just even the products or solutions you're trying to sell for your organization can be unique in and of itself. So fighting for that top competition to really identify the right talent for your organization has become even more fierce in the marketplace. The next is really kind of employee turnover. Now, it's no news to anyone on the call, right? But sales is, at some points, can be really a high turnover role, depending on the type of individuals you're looking for, how you can ramp them up, and really ensuring that you're keeping that top talent within your organization, especially when it comes to kind of making sure you have the right commission structure, bonus, etc. So employment turnover can really cost your organization. So how do you kind of make sure, again, you're keeping in mind identifying and selecting the right individuals and then keeping those individuals engaged so you minimize that turnover and you don't hit a cost to your organization. And lastly, just those reactive hiring practices. So we all, again, when you think about that turnover cost too, and just where we are in terms of kind of being more reactive than proactive, when we kind of lose someone in our organization, that obviously is going to happen and continue to happen. But how do we really take those reactive hiring practices, be a little bit more proactive in looking at the talent we have internal, what their potential is, and how can we really help empower them to rise to the occasion and enable them to really kind of be those individuals that make our organization successful for the long haul. Now, for most of you, when you think about hiring and selection process, it's pretty traditional, right? So that traditional hiring process, usually for everyone on the call, no matter what role you're really hiring for, starts with that position opening. Whether someone's left the organization, someone's been promoted, whatever that case may be, you have a position that really just opens. Once that position's open, you kind of seep through and screen all these resumes. You go through and schedule interviews. Most of your interviews are based on skills, experience for the job. Does this resume really fit what I'm looking for? Does this person have the sales background or come from a competitor that I want to kind of bring on board? Whatever it is that those are skills, the experience you specifically look for, you spend a lot of time as a hiring manager seeping through those resumes, looking for those keywords that are really going to pop out to you so you feel comfortable before you get to kind of the interview process. And then the interview process can at times be somewhat long and laborious, just given it's kind of outside of your normal day-to-day role, and loss of productivity could sometimes play a role. And then you usually kind of go out and you're like, okay, I've interviewed those individuals. Maybe I interviewed about anywhere from, say, 5 to 10 people, give or take. And I decide to hire the most qualified candidate that's available for this position at that time. So you're trying to find the best of at that time. This is really that traditional way of thinking about hiring and what that looks like. For us, though, as the kind of industry is changing, right, as we looked at those current talent challenges and really what's facing us in the marketplace today, what we're really forced with is for each one of us, whether we're a hiring manager, an HR representative, or a salesperson within the role today that helps with hiring, we're forced to think differently. We really want to think about how do we look at today's kind of talent in the marketplace that's available from an external perspective, folks that we have internally, and how do we maximize those individuals? How do we not only maximize them, but how do we also look about the way we actually go about hiring and developing those individuals? What kind of technology should we use? What kind of materials and reference points? Who should be involved in the process? These are all questions that come to mind that really enable us and force us to think differently and be a little bit more creative around how we're actually going to attack the problem at hand or the issue at hand, meaning how are we really going to think through what our hiring should look like and how we best capitalize on talent to bring into the organization, or talent that's already in the organization. What comes to mind when we think about those, kind of how we think differently, for us here at Outmatch and Divine, we really think about hiring for potential. So don't just do that reactive hiring process, right, where you kind of just go out, you post a job, you screen through resumes, you hire the most qualified candidate based on that resume and experience, but really start back, be a little bit more proactive in what you're looking for. So for us, when we think about hiring for potential, it's really these 6 buckets that come to mind. So what we're hoping we can actually ask you all is, out of these 6 buckets, if you could take a minute or two and think through which of these 6 really come to mind for you when you think about hiring for potential. Where are you looking to really make improvements in your own organization or your process to really ensure that you're maximizing that selection and development process? Is it align talent with business objectives, drive critical leadership behaviors, strengthen your bench, accelerate effectiveness, increase your long-term retention, or improve succession planning? Or is it one that's not listed here right now? So if we could take a moment, Logan, if you don't mind, kind of starting a poll with the audience so we can get their feedback on which of these 6, or maybe one that's not listed, really comes to mind for them.
Sure. We'll launch the poll right now. Everyone should be able to click one answer. And we are waiting for results. It's always fun to watch these polls because you start to see who really knows their objective. All right, it looks like that the results are in. All right. And Kellyanne, I'm going to show this on the screen so that we can see where our audience lies.
Perfect. Oh, great. So it looks like, we have a good distribution, but overall, most of you on the call really are looking to align talent with business objectives. So I'm going to make an assumption here too, but you're looking to make sure that those, especially when we think of sales talent, are really aligned with where you want to drive your business. So those individuals that you're bringing into the organization or promoting within really believe in what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to go about doing that. I don't want to minimize the other folks that really have objectives too, where you're going to strengthen your bench, accelerate effectiveness, retention, and succession planning. But I think it's great that all of you really have a good, healthy overview of what you're focused on, and really the solutions that we're going to recommend for you all in terms of some best practices throughout the rest of today's presentation. We'll touch on all of these for you. Great. So for all of you, and this may be slightly different depending on the structure of your organization, whether it's a small, mid-sized, or larger enterprise type of organization, but for the most part, these are really the types of roles you all are kind of looking at from a sales progression in a sales career within an organization. So starting at a BDR or SDR level, that individual that's more kind of probably lower level of experience, just coming into a sales role, maybe doing some inbound or outbound calls. And then as they progress up, really kind of progressing into a full sales rep or account executive, going into kind of a sales or sales management type of role, a full-fledged sales management role, and then some level of leadership beyond management to go into a director or VP of sales. This is pretty atypical when we think about the progression from lower level professional roles as an individual contributor on up to kind of executive. When we look at this, this is really that natural kind of progression where we think about our solutions and how we can apply those solutions within each one of these specific steps as you get higher up in your career in succession planning too. For us, in order to kind of look at that natural progression and really think about the right solution that makes sense for our clients, as we look at those different challenges and business outcomes you all are trying to solve for us, it's really about kind of not only just using a combination of our software and analytics, so really the Divine kind of outmatched solutions through assessments, But how do you do that in combination with really your own managed programs, right? So that kind of training, development, or any other type of programs that you have in-house, and how can you combine those programs with the software and analytics and solutions that we can help to provide to really have a tailored selection and development solution for you to really drive that business outcome. And part of our self-service and these client-managed programs, they really start not only at the individual level, but they help you progress up by identifying what's important at the individual level. So really personality traits or competencies that we'll get into in just a little bit. How does that also affect and look at the team level as you look at team dynamics and really building a culture for your organization? And then what does that look like at the overall organization culture perspective? How does that really help you in driving the business outcome of aligning with your business objectives? Making sure that both at the individual, the team, and the culture level, everything kind of is cohesive and everything is measured and kind of builds on one another. So for us, it's really about that software and analytics that we can help provide for you and some of the solutions that we'll go through in just a minute in a live case study of how that in conjunction with some of these client managed programs can really give you that tailored approach. When we first get started, when we think about kind of what are we looking to do, when we have a client such as yourselves, whether you're a client already with us and we've gone through this process before, or a prospective client that we hope to work with in the future, for us it's about pausing for a moment and really understanding how do we define job success. When we think about a role such as a BDR or an SDR or even a VP of sales, we start by understanding the role itself and how are we defining success in that role. By defining that success, it's really going to play into the measures that we're going to collect all throughout the selection and development process. But then overarching, how are we going to measure that impact overall? For us, really the key objectives when we think about hiring for potential and those next three roles within an organization, it's really about building and developing a common language for how we're evaluating potential. What does that look like? And how do we actually define success? And what is the language we're going to use to define that success? For us, it's even more important about that kind of data and measurement. So making sure that we're leveraging data and measurement so that there's a cohesive and comprehensive model that not only helps you with the one role we're talking about, but it also is kind of consistent as you move up that kind of ladder of succession. So as you move from a BDR, SDR to that kind of sales AE and then sales management, all of your kind of data and your measurements have to be cohesive as you go up that ladder. You also want to kind of evaluate your existing employees. So where is your employees today when we think about defining success? How do they measure up to your definition of success today? And what does that look like for us when we look at our bench that exists in the organization? After you've done that, you really want to think about and apply that specific same measurement, same job model for success to your external hiring processes and making sure that we're kind of having consistent internal and external processes for both selection and development. These are really the key objectives that we really would challenge you all to really think through as you're thinking about kind of how you're going to hire for these next three roles and thinking of these four key objectives as your main kind of benchmark to kick off for success. This is really our potential model. So after we've kind of thought through our key objectives, what we're looking to accomplish, and when working with any kind of client, and potentially clients like those that are on the call today, for us, it's really understanding potential. What does that look like? And it breaks down, when we think about it from an Outmatch and Divine perspective, it breaks into these four quadrants. Really, what does it take to grow effectively in the organization? That's really what is their innate ability? What's their personality measurement? What does that tell you about them and how they might be a fit for this role? There's also this component of learning agility. How do they adapt and learn quickly on the job? If you think about a sales person you bring into the role that maybe doesn't have as much experience within sales, but how can they pick those skills up quickly? How can they learn the kind of techniques that are important for the role? And how can they do that and adapt it to their own kind of their own day-to-day execution of tasks and activities to make sure that they're successful? And then motivation. We all know this is important. It's even more important when you think about a sales organization. So does this person have that desire to succeed? What's really motivating them? Not just money per se, but that internal motivator, that intrinsic motivator that's going to help them get through levels of stress that really come up when you're within a sales type role with any type of organization. And then most importantly for me, But although equally weighted when we look at the potential model is this culture alignment. Culture is really key to making sure that really this individual you're bringing into the organization is a strong fit with what the organization supports. They really kind of align with the values and motivators that that organization stands for, and they really feel that there's a connection that's going to help them, again, get through those levels of stress that can sometimes peak up within their role on a day-to-day basis. That potential model really plays out with a few different types of measurements that we have really leveraged for a total solution with our clients. So when you think about those 4 quadrants, we really measure those 4 quadrants in a couple of different ways. For us, we really, with most of those folks that might be on the call today, really are familiar with this innate ability. And what the measurements we have within the innate ability are really your personality measurements. A competency fit, right? What are those key competencies that we've defined for you, and how do we measure them to really understand if your candidates or even your current employees have the right innate fit or innate ability for the sales role at hand? Cognitive measures, really what are their intellectual horsepower? Do they have that intellectual horsepower? They have good critical and abstract reasoning or thinking skills that are going to help benefit them within this role. And then obviously the kind of intangibles, that relevant knowledge and experience that can also contribute to their innate ability and how they'll actually go above and beyond in their role and be the right fit. Then that learning agility component, a few measurements here, really again, competency fit comes into play, as well as this abstract reasoning component. That's really again kind of how do you think on the job? How do you kind of, given little pieces of information, how do you piece that together to really come out with an outcome? And then your overall learning capabilities as an individual, and a measurement that we have that really helps get at that capability. Culture alignment and motivation are also 2 other pieces of framework that are really going to be measured through engagement and job involvement on a day-to-day or over time. And then motivation is really this track or record of success that can be measured not only just through performance, but also just through other specific measurements that we'll get into later.
So once you've defined this framework for the role that you're hiring for, and you have framework for what you need in potential, you can begin measuring. And by applying the scoring from each of these job competencies with its relationship to job performance, and summing all this up in factors into an overall job performance score, we can create a powerful predictor for job performance that will help you identify top performers from your entire applicant pool. And what that means as far as top performers is the ones that most closely resemble or closely align with the top performers on all of these competencies, not just the overall job fit score, but the other job competencies that you see. So we have a linear path that Kellyanne talked about a little bit earlier, and for sales. And as we showed, the ones shaded here are in blue are the most important, and the others are the contributing competencies. So as you can see, by looking at these side by side, there is overlap from one level to the next. Now, your sales organization may not have 5 levels in the sales department. Maybe you have 2. Maybe you have sales rep and sales manager. And if that's the case, it's even more critical that you know what defines success in each role. I'll share that the most common and likely the most expensive mistake that we see in organizations is when they take their highest performing salesperson, they promote that person to a sales manager. And objectively speaking, and you can see this on the screen, the competencies that are required for a person to be successful in sales are not the same competencies that are required for sales leadership. And so what happens is the unfortunate ending to this promotion is, first, you lose the revenue of your top performer, and second, you now have a sales leader who's failing. So instead, if a company could do a side-by-side comparison of where their salespeople are today, what are their strengths, what are their gaps, and look at each one of them and see who has the highest potential to move into leadership. Then they can do a growth and development plan that is targeted and it is intentional. And I will share that that will help you avoid a lot of costly mistakes. So what we're looking at here is another more common advancement, and that is from the BDR or business development rep to a sales rep. Now, you can see from the competencies here that there are a lot of similarities in these roles, of course, because they're both selling roles. So the business development rep, or also called sales development rep, and the sales rep role have competencies in common like ambition and drive, sales prospecting, control and close, and so forth. Well, a high-performing business development rep may have several of these competencies in common with the sales rep. The sales rep role may actually need those scores to be stronger than the BDR role requires. So for example, if you're looking here at control and close, you see that typically a BDR is working with a prospect to schedule or close for the first appointment. And although this requires some control and close skill, it doesn't require as much as the sales rep does, because the sales rep is the one who's responsible for taking that prospect through the rest of the sales process and closing the sale. Here's another view of these sales roles. So we have an example here of a candidate coming in as a BDR with a snapshot of what her career path could look like and an objective look at her competency strength based on assessment data. So remember, the title of our webinar is How to Hire Salespeople Who Will Succeed in Their Next 3 Roles. So you have to consider, what are the next 3 roles in your organization? It could be that there are lateral moves. So maybe somebody moves from sales into operations and then moves into leadership. But know that top talent wants to know that they have a career path. And succession planning is not just for big companies anymore. So if you're unclear on these advancement pathways, this is something that you can tap into your Sandler consultant with, and they'll assist you along with improving hiring practices and development for your sales force. So let's take another look at our sales competency chart, noting the first 3 roles: business development rep, sales rep, and selling manager. The selling manager is a manager that both sells and supervises others. So in these roles, we see that they do share some competencies from one level to the next, because again, they're all selling roles. However, the priority of the competency has changed. So there's overlap, but there's also priority differences. Now this is a bit of an eye chart, but we're looking here at the first 2 roles, and now we're adding to that the leadership roles. So we have a selling manager, which we mentioned earlier, the sales manager, and a VP of sales. The overlap start here is now with leadership competencies, whereas the last one was more the selling competencies. So if you take a moment to see the differences between a sales rep and a sales manager, what you'll notice is that there's very little overlap between those 2 positions. And as I mentioned earlier, that's where a lot of companies make a huge promotion mistake, where they take their top sales rep, they move them into a sales manager position, and they watch them fail. So fortunately, you don't have to guess if somebody is a good fit for a different position. Whether it's a lateral move or it's a promotion, you can assess them and have some great objective data to assist you in making this decision.
And like Darby was just saying too, and kind of defining what that looks like, and really having the help with your Sandler consultant to use the tools to kind of define those competencies, understand the nuances by level and roles, that data is really important and is going to help you identify the right person. What we want to also do for you too is take this one step further. So for all those on the call, identifying the right fit for success does have a lot to do with those soft skills we're talking about, and making sure that you identify the right type of individual that'll move into leadership and management. But what also is important as salespeople, or even just for any organization, is bottom line results, right? So as part of our partnerships that we've done with clients over the years, is really not only look at the potential, but also look at the performance as well. And how do those two correlate to really give you the bigger picture to understand who are those right people that really will be shining stars, that we're confident in both their potential and performance to really move them up that career path of succession and be confident that they can also maybe be brought in as an SDR, but have that potential like we're talking about to go from SDR to an AE sales rep, and then on up into management and potential kind of VP or executive leadership. What you're seeing here is for us, when we're partnering with these clients, these are the types of kind of performance metrics we're collecting. And these may vary from client to client, but for us, we're going to use obviously that kind of talent competency overall fit. So using all the information we've just gone through in terms of how we're identifying those competencies, it's all going to have a score associated with it, like Darby kind of shared with us through the assessments. We take that score, which is really that overall job fit score, and then we collect kind of operational metrics and KPIs. KPIs are important and specific to our clients. And then job metrics are sales specific, percent to goals. That's another example of another type of specific KPI that we collect as well. So really the idea is taking this performance measure that we've defined and then coupling it with these KPIs and operational metrics and job metrics that we know that are important for each one of our clients as we're thinking through really how we're going to identify potential and then measure that potential. What you see here is really an output of what we've actually done with our clients in using all these different kind of data points. And for us, it's really about, as you're collecting these data points and looking at your internal talents, or even preparing on kind of what are those roles I need to hire externally for, we call this kind of our bench strength analysis, where it's really going to help us look at the aggregate level. We can also look at the individual level, but it really gives a view and a visual to understand where is my organization or my talent falling today, my internal talent for these current roles. When we think of a BDR, where do they sit today in terms of their potential, which again, if you remember, is that competency fit score through the assessment, and then those performance metrics we're talking about that we collected. So on the left, what you're seeing is really an objective 9 box. That's an HR term for saying kind of those, we pulled all the data of all the individuals that are in that current role into one specific graph so you can understand those that fall further on the left have a lower potential and a lower performance. Those that fall further to the right on the lower right are going to be kind of your high performance but low potential. And those that fall in the upper right quadrant are really going to be those that have that high performance, high potential. So those that really do well in their current job from a performance metrics perspective, but also have the potential because they really have and embody those competencies we defined that could actually take them to that next level role. And this gives you also an understanding of where you're going to target your development. So specifically, when you're looking at this specific graph on the left, we see that there's kind of a distribution that is a little kind of all over the place, but for the most part, what it's going to tell you is that this organization, the sample data we're using, they have a lot of high achievers, those that fall in kind of the middle range in terms of potential and performance, in terms of potential, but have a high level of performance. And then they also have individuals that kind of fall on their lower side in terms of potential and performance. So what this is going to do is just give you some visual in terms of what do I need to do and look when I'm looking at my current individuals in role, where do I need to focus my efforts? And what kind of targeted development can I do to really help those individuals improve in performance to get to the next, to improve in performance, and do well in their current role and maximize their current role? Or those that maybe are actually pretty high potential, high performers, how do I keep them engaged, give them development to prepare them for that next role into management or leadership?
Kelly, I love how you do the 9 box and how the different titles in each box, it's just very self-directed. So once you plot everything in there, you know who you should leave in a position and who you should, spend some time managing and coaching, and who you might want to find a different position for. So love that 9 box. And so once you have all of those metrics, And it's really not as complex as it might seem. So once you have all of that, then you have identified the gaps in learning, and especially for those who are in that top row that were the high performers and high potential. So what kind of tools do you have? Well, once somebody is assessed with the Divine Inventory, there is a develop report for the employee to use for self-development. It includes development tips and a guide to assist with the process. In addition to the development report that is for the employee, there's also a coach report, and that is for the person's supervisor, manager, trainer, coach, whoever is helping that person supporting them in their learning. And it has all the assessment results, meaning the data that the individual has, along with tips on how to execute a development plan. And then, of course, there's the Sandler training. We have partnered with Sandler for over 15 years. Actually, it'll be 15 years this November. And over the years, we have continued to calibrate our competencies with their training, including their customer success programs, their sales training, their leadership training, and their newest program, organizational excellence. So there's a lot that you can do when it comes to, now that you have the data, what are your next steps?
Great, both Kellyanne and Darby, thank you so much for this presentation. And luckily, we've had a couple of questions come through. I also encourage anybody that is attending to please submit questions through the chat if you have them. We'll jump right in. So one of the questions we've received over our time today is, and I believe this question is for Darby, how often should you assess an employee to see if they are improving, or if there is improvement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're asked that often, because especially when you're investing in training and development, companies want to know, is it working? And oftentimes we see that assessing a person who is an employee earlier than 9 months, probably you don't see a lot of movement. So we really recommend about 12 months or more. The exception I would say to that is, and Kellyanne, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, is if you have assessment results that are 6 months old or older, and you're looking at that person for advancement, you may want to have a fresh look at where they are. So Kellyanne, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I would say I'm with you, Darby. I think it really depends on when did they last go through the assessments, and kind of what are your overall objectives for assessing them, right? So if it is for development, certainly you could have them retest, because I do believe that it gives the participant the ability to feel like they're putting their best foot forward, right? And they feel a little bit more confident in what the output would be, especially if you're going to look to share that output with them. I would tell you too, if you don't have the opportunity to retest them after 6 months, that's okay as well, because personality for the most part stays pretty consistent over time. I mean, after you've gone through kind of adolescence and into early adulthood, your personality kind of is who you are. I mean, so really, you're not going to see major shifts in the changes in scoring, so to speak, in the assessment. But what it will do is it'll really give, I think, the participant the ability to feel confident in the results. And in some cases, if they have kind of learned behaviors in certain areas, you might see slight shifts in certain competencies, given where they might have placed some emphasis in their learning and development in the years past.
And I would add to that, if you're not doing training and development with them, don't expect them to get any better. So there's no reason to reassess.
I would agree.
Logan, do you have other questions for us?
Yeah, I do. I have a nice question about, we've talked a lot in this session today about finding the next talent, but also about what current talent we have. And this is probably based more on the retention side of things, but what do I do if I assess my current team and they're all bad?
I don't know if I necessarily, have you assessed your current team and they're all bad? I don't know if I'd call them bad, right? But if maybe they score on the lower side of kind of the success model we build for you all, right? Or your Sandler consultant builds for you all. What I think it is what it's bringing to life is that maybe there's some really good areas of opportunity for group development, right? So remember, when we're defining kind of success, we're defining success of what you would like it to look like, both now and aspirationally going forward. So often what I'll see in some of our clients is they may have kind of a shift where the role is shifting and the expectations of that role is shifting. And they are using this exercise to kind of understand where their current talent is against that new kind of shift and where the shift is going, and aspirationally where they want the company to go. So it wouldn't be surprising if you hire a lot of people against a certain kind of set of expectations in the past, and when you're measuring them up against the new model, they may kind of score lower. Again, I don't think that's necessarily bad per se. What I think it's going to give you is some clear understanding of really wanting to target development in those areas where they kind of shake out and where they're a little lower in those competencies, and really maximize the use of some of those tools that are kind of at your fingertips in terms of the development reports, in terms of Sandler training, to really get folks equipped and be prepared for what's coming as the role is shifting, so they can really start to kind of measure their success against the new role and the new set of expectations.
Now that is great advice. And so I'm going to add to that oftentimes when we see this, it's because the expectations on the KPIs or the goals or the results that these people are responsible for is very fuzzy. And once those things are made more clear, and there's accountability put in place so that they know what they're responsible for and they're held accountable for doing that, generally one of two things happens. Either people start performing better or they self-select out. And so when they self-select out, and I know hiring it's a pain, but when they self-select out, that now you have an opportunity to hire stronger people, stronger being that they're a better fit for your organization and team.
Great, and I would say that this actually pertains as well into the after we hire. Great question. So can you explain more about the develop report and how it is, quote, self-guided? I want my people to take charge of some of their development.
Sure, I can start on that. So the way that the development report was written is so that the person who has taken the assessment can go through and they can see where their competency fits are. The develop report, by the way, does not have an overall job fit score. It only has the competency scores in it. So a person can look at their competencies, let's say it's control and close or effective questioning or addresses conflict, whatever those things might be. And then they can go, continue to go through the report and read the development tips. It might point them to certain books to read or videos to go to. So there are resources that are listed in there. And then in the back of it, it actually has a format so that they can fill out, here are my strengths, here are the things that are holding me back or torpedoing my success or limiting my success, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Now there's also a part in there for the supervisor or manager to add what they're going to do to support the person in their growth. And there's like a day, a date, and a time for the next meeting. So it kind of gives a path there. And I look at these develop reports like I would look at something that I would get maybe for a workout, something that is specific for me. Now, if I go to the gym with my specific workout, I'm going to have certain results because it's me working out. But if I hire a personal trainer, and here's where your Sandler folks come in, and they look at, here's what I'm supposed to be doing, now my results are going to be exponentially better because, that's their expertise. So there is self-guided. If you have people that you want them to invest in themselves, invest time and energy, and understand, self-awareness is a huge thing when it comes to training and development. But then you can take that and, marry that with whatever training and development that you're doing so that they have even higher results. Kellyanne, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered most of it there. I don't have anything else to add.
Well, great. Well, I think that is really going to wrap it up. I think that's really where we, you see a lot of that with development and understanding where they're going and what that action plan needs to be. So, again, Kellyanne, Darby, thank you so much. To all of you watching, thank you. Thank you for joining the webinar, How to Hire People Who Succeed in Their Next 3 Roles. And by the way, a couple of things to wrap up. You will receive this webinar presentation and a link to this recording in the next coming days. Also, again, any questions that you might have, topics or feedback, reach out to me at lsand@outmatch.com. Thank you so much again for attending. I'm Logan Sand. Take care.